Hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of Vicariously Podcast. I am super stoked about today's guest, and I have a little cheat sheet here. So I'm going to give you a hint. What does Shaquille O'Neal, Tony Hawk, Brett Favre, Muhammad Ali, Joe Torre, LeBron James, Michael Phelps, Lance Armstrong, Dan Marino, John Elway, Derek Jeter, Evander Holyfield, Pete Sampras, Sammy Sosa, Emmett Smith, Serena Williams, Venus Williams. What do all these people have in common? Obviously, you guessed it. They have all sat down with today's guest, Mr. Rick Chapman. Now, Rick Chapman is a photographer, and he has had a very illustrious career, most noted for two things. One, his work with the ESPYs. So on two different occasions, he has been asked to sit down and photograph the elite ESPY winners. So that's where you get the Shaun Whites, the LeBron James, all these iconic sports celebrities. He has sat with all of them, and he has on two different occasions, and one of which, this entire collection that he has shot has been featured in the National Smithsonian of American Art, which is pretty illustrious. So that's kind of the first thing that he's known for. The second thing that I would say he's most known for is his sit-down meetings and full day shoots with Muhammad Ali. He talks about that in the podcast, that on two separate occasions he has sat with Muhammad Ali and or his family for some pretty epic photo shoots to really get into the heart and soul of who that man is. Very, very interesting. One other piece that he will talk about is he has also been outsourced by ABC. And so anytime that you have watched the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup, the Super Bowl in years past, they have all been, the intros have all been outsourced to be handled by Rick Chapman. So when you see the picture of Tim Duncan holding the trophy, or LeBron James raising up the trophy, and him sitting down and discussing what it would mean to him to win, that was all Rick Chapman that sat in a small room with each of those athletes individually and captured those moments that then is shared out on the broadcast of the network. So super interesting guy. Again, moreover, what I took away from my sit down with him is just some life lessons. So not even specific to the photography entrepreneurial venture that he went into, but really just who he is as a person, how he has decided who he is going to be, and then backfilled it. Really remarkable guy. Long interview. Absolutely had a blast. He gave me 30 minutes, and the sit down ended up being about an hour and 40 minutes. So just a badass dude, and really fun. So hope you enjoy it. Again, Rick Chapman for today's Vicariously Podcast. Out.
So give it a check just so you can
check. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
How's your level?
You're good.
My shitty voice.
So you were in the gym the other day. Today's Monday. You were in the gym on Saturday night, I want to say.
I was in the gym on Saturday night. No, I wasn't.
Sunday night?
Oh, we're at the rec center?
Yeah, the Incline Village.
I was picking up my son.
Yeah.
You don't see me in a gym very often.
Well, now that I've sat with you and met you, I know your voice, and I heard your voice the other night.
Oh.
I heard your voice the other night, and the reason that it's coming back to me is because I heard your voice, and someone was asking, "Do you ever take family portraits?" And I just remember hearing it off in the background, and I'm like, it's such a weird conversation to have right at the basketball court. And then now, fast forward, that was you.
That was definitely me, and that was a very interesting conversation because I know that couple pretty well, and the wife was asking me the question. And I really do shy away from doing those kind of portraits.
Yeah.
I've done plenty of them for friends and certainly my own family, extended family, etc. But I don't I don't really enjoy them because what I really enjoy is one-on-one engagement when it comes to portraiture. Because to me, a portrait is this real two-way conversation that ends up being verbal. It becomes visual. It becomes very much energetic. So I shy away from group anything. Like I shot the whole UConn women's team, and I would have loved to do each of their individual portraits, but there wasn't the time. But groups don't do it for me. So really it boils down to that. But this couple was asking if I did that, and I had a few answers. I didn't say that because it's too much to say.
Yeah.
But the husband dove right into like, oh, well, why would he do that? The guy's photographed Muhammad Ali, or he wouldn't want his name attached to our family photo. And it literally made me feel hot because I would never want anyone to think that I thought like that, because I absolutely don't. It has nothing to do with that. I was like, no. I don't think of myself in any special way at all. We're all the same. That's the point of a lot of my celebrity and athlete portraits, is I'm driving at that very point. And so I said, really, it's because I don't know how to ask for money. I'm terrible at charging. If I know somebody, it feels embarrassing to even give a price.
Yeah.
$100 or $10,000, So I said, you tell me what you would be comfortable with. We could start there. Like I did a high school senior portrait for the guy who does the maintenance at school where my kids go. And he's like, he's like, you're the best photographer I know. And would you be willing to do my daughter's portrait? And I know his daughter, and she's phenomenal. And I said, absolutely. He goes, I don't know that I can afford you. I said, yes, you can, because you're going to tell me what you're paying me. And he said, well, I have $400. And I said, then that's the price. It's going to take all day. I'm going to do days of Photoshop. And of course, that's not my rate.
Yeah.
But to me, it was about the person.
Yeah.
And this young girl, Athena, young woman, really is just special. And so, I don't know, to get back to you hearing my voice, I was literally standing there trying to explain myself to these guys. And finally we landed it. They own a chiropractic office. And I said, I'll tell you what, your family's awesome. If you want me to do your portrait, we'll do a trade, and I'll have like hours of chiropractic work.
Genius. It wasn't Jeff, was it?
Jeff Loudon.
Okay.
Yeah.
I met him immediately after that. Then I don't know how I missed you, but
he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Amazing guy. He's super talented.
He was down in LA because I've been having back issues. So
oh yeah.
Eric swears by him. So.
Oh yeah. Jeff's great. And they're a wonderful family. And I can't imagine opening a business. Christy was trying to coach me on like, well, you could charge so much for families. Yeah. And I was like, this image of me doing family portraits in Tahoe just didn't feel right for me. You know, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not my direction at all. So
that's well said. All right. You ready to get going?
Yeah. Sure.
All right. So I won't go into your full background because I don't really like doing that, because I think that people can find that on the internet if they really care and they really want to dive into it.
Sure.
But so I am sitting here with Rick Chapman. Hello. You were born and raised in Ohio, is that right?
I was, that's correct. Till age 10, I was in a town called Bay Village outside of Cleveland on Lake Erie.
That sounds like a small town.
Kind of small, yeah. Sweet.
And then
ride your bikes around.
You went to University of Michigan.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Double major in literature and photography. Is it?
Yeah. Focus on photography, which was a shift for me after spending some time feeling like I needed to do quote unquote business to go into life. I was an artist, football player, high school student, so I loved to do ceramics in high school and always had clay on my pants, and I loved playing all the sports, and my buddies and I, basketball, football, whatever. And when I went off to school, I felt that I was supposed to not be an artist anymore, and I was supposed to get serious and find a career that could make a good living, and all of the logical pathways that most young Americans are put upon. And so, to kind of sum up that University of Michigan experience, it was interesting because I love people. I love engaging with people. And I found this major at the time it was called industrial psychology. So it was the study of psychology of groups. So you could end up getting a job with, say, an Anderson Consulting, where you're helping groups within a business engage with one another. And I found that to be quite interesting. And it required writing, which I kept a journal since 8th grade. And so I loved to write. I loved hand to paper. And it felt like a good thing, a smart thing. The projection for income was decent.
Yeah.
Very logical. But I also paid for college bartending. And so I, as chance has it, with dorms and all of that, I ended up befriending a young man named Peter Sandback, was an art major and a very unique and dedicated individual and a little crazy. And, I just was very attracted to him and a couple other great guys, Paul Smith. And so Peter came to me midway through our second year and said, hey, what do you want to do for summer? Let's stay in Ann Arbor and bartend, and we'll take a class to get some credits. And I said, yeah, well, what should we take? And he was a photo major at the time. I said, well, maybe why don't we just do a photo class? I'll do photo 101. Sounds fun. And it was the most intense thing. And I say this to students when I talk to them, because I like talking to students at SNC here and helping people out if I can. And when I took that class after a week, it was like something inside of me ignited and honestly reignited. That kid who did ceramics. Yeah. And it was that instinct, that voice inside of what moves me, what drives me. And really the question of who am I was alive and well. And I'm so grateful that 8th grade teacher got us writing journals, because it was me in my journal that summer that negotiated this feeling inside that was coming up from the action of making something. I was a maker of things. I was making photographs. And so the negotiation in my journal kind of went like, feels good. My instincts are screaming, do what you love, all those kind of cliches. And then I had the negotiation of the hardest one of all. How do you make a living? Yeah. And, I knew as a ceramicist, for me, it was like, the vision was craft fairs and selling mugs for $10 wasn't going to work out. Not that there aren't amazing, very successful ceramicists that make a whole lot of money that are incredible, but I didn't see that for myself. But logically, I looked at photography. I was like, oh gosh, there are people that photograph cars. There are people that shoot weddings. There are photojournalists. There are high school portrait photographers. The list went on and on and on. And I felt like that was my negotiation bag for my dad and my mom. Like, hey, I'm going to change my major. And I don't know what the path's going to be, but it's going to be photography. And my dad in particular, my mom was cool. She's like, do what you love. My dad challenged me. He's a GM executive and a Navy commander and finance guy. So it wasn't jiving with him so much.
That wasn't a logical answer.
No. And so, but what was really cool is he said, I know you love writing. Why don't you double down on your efforts and get an English degree too? And so I kind of created my own curriculum and my own major. And that in fact is what I did. I spent tons of time. I studied English literature in London for a semester, and I wrote lots of papers and lots of journal entries, and I took tons of photographs. And I knew that I was leaving the University of Michigan with a vision of myself that was going to be me. I didn't know exactly the path, but I can elaborate on some of the steps that I took. Yeah, that I think kicked me off well. But
that's wild.
I'll let you roll.
No, you're good. I'm not going to cut you off. That's wild. I think honestly, that's probably one of my biggest regrets to date, is that I didn't follow through with my journal. I think when you're growing up in elementary school and middle school, there's always a ton of times that you're given a journal to it's in the curriculum, or it's the Christmas gift you get, and you just, in general, I'm sure most people don't follow through. Yeah. But the fact that you have it through such an adolescent age, or such an early on age where you're kind of all over the place, to be able to look back at that and reflect, had you not even gone down that path of photography or followed your dream, to be able to look back at it and be like, shit, I went off course. Let me get back to what really excited me.
Yeah. The journaling's interesting. I did it from 8th grade, sadly, until my first son was born. And then I had big aspirations to make it really great. And I never found the time after that. So in my closet, I have volumes on the top shelf, and it pretty much stops around 2006. And part of my personal goal is to now get back to that. Yeah. That it's been a decade or so. But what's interesting is I've never read a word of any of those journals.
Really?
Not a word. And it makes me know. and this happens with photography too. I remember a lot of the pictures that I took, even if I didn't print them.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the action, neurologic. I'm not an expert on this, but my belief is that once you set up a pathway in your body, you're an expert lacrosse player. I would argue that you have neurological pathways that are set for life for you that you could talk about. For me, if I take a photo, if I stop and give it that attention, I remember taking the photo most of the time. And the same with hand to paper, at least it used to be. If I wrote it down, it became embedded in my neurology. And so processing anger, processing joy, processing love, processing philosophical questions, just by that hand of the paper, I think that it really became part of my cells, you know? So I didn't even need to go back and reread it.
That's wild. I totally agree. And I would say I have a very photographic memory, not to use that pun, but, and same thing with lacrosse, to your point. Yeah, I can picture plays that happened 10, 15 years ago, maybe even longer. And it's the same thing as far as anything that I have ever put down on paper. It's almost like you reinstill that moment or that thought or what, and it's almost solidifies it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So you get out of school, you have your direction. How do you take the next steps?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I had the chance, you know, this cliche of doors open, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doors open and you pass through, right? So I see life as a series of doors opening. And I really do see that, you know, our mutual friend, Eric, connected us, you know, hey, blog, something, interview, very unclear. But I could hear the squeak of a door. Now, what does that mean? That might mean that you and I are going to become lifelong friends. It might mean that this interview leads to something else that might benefit you. It might benefit me. But I don't know. But I could hear the squeak of the door. So I said, okay, right? And as we talked about earlier, I'm actually in the process of right now trying to be very aware of not overcommitting. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm very aware of the squeak of the door right now. So when I shifted to, it's so funny to be going back to college memories, but when I decided there to shift to focusing on photography and believing that it would be what I did, and I think that's critical. It's that belief that decide, I read somewhere, decide what you are and be that. Not going to be what you are. Claim it already and then be that. You fill in, you backfill it. I am a photographer, and then you backfill it. And I see people do that and it works. You know, you talked about someone else you interviewed, I believe it was a mortgage a person in the mortgage business. When you briefly told me that gentleman's story, I saw someone deciding what they're going to be, saying it, naming it, and then he backfilled. So back to college. So I decided I'm going to be a photographer. Okay. Suddenly my friends, the people around me, start seeing me as that because that's what I am. And that's what I'm doing pretty obsessively. And a dear friend of mine, we're still friends. She knew a guy in Ann Arbor that had the Volkswagen catalog every year. He'd wheel Volkswagens into his studio and shoot the steering wheel, shoot the seats. A part of photography that I certainly didn't learn about in college and was interested. So meet this guy. His name's Pusto. Okay. So I heard the squeak of the door. A door opened. Instead of saying, no, I'm hungover or I got something to do today. It's like, oh, yeah, let's go to visit Pusto shooting Volkswagens. Well, that door opened. Now I'm talking to him and we have a nice time. I learn what he does and I'll go back to this. And then I left and then I wrote him a thank you note. Back to the writing. I wrote him a thank you note. He appreciated that. He mentioned when we were together, his buddy in England that shoots cars, Derek Gardner. Well, fast forward, suddenly I decide I'm going to study in London, English literature. All right, what about that guy, Derek Gardner? Well, I reached out to Pusto. Remember that guy that oh yeah, Derek. The thank you note kept the door open with Pusto, and he introduces me pre-internet, writes a letter, makes a phone call, whatever he had to do. Suddenly I'm having lunch with Derek Gardner and his wife and his kids in London. I go to his studio. He's got this unbelievable, like fantasy, beautiful studio. And so it's this kind of stuff. And the thank you note went to him and the doors kept opening. And I remember at that lunch, he's like, you should study this book called The Black Book. And at the time, it was where commercial photographers advertised their services to ad agencies. And so by studying The Black Book, if I decided where I wanted to live, I could find the photographers that I admired in that city, which is what I did. So as I was in my senior year at college, I was also studying who's this guy, Bob Mizono in San Francisco? Who's this woman, Elma Garcia in San Francisco? Who are these people? Who's this guy, Will Mosgrove? All black and white, beautiful portrait photographs that service the advertising industry. So I got to go learn from those people. So that's what I did when I moved to San Francisco after college. Took a break as a salmon fisherman up in Bodega Bay, and then moved to the city. And I started pounding those doors and ringing those telephones.
Yeah.
Until I got assistant work. So the squeak of the door, the opening of the door, the keeping of the door open is a big theme for me in life. Relationships are everything. I believe that healthy relationships with lovers, with parents, with spouses, with children, with friends. I'm one who spends a lot of time dedicated to maintaining friendships and relationships because it feeds me. It really feeds me to talk with old friends about memories or the future. It feeds me to have a relationship with a wife where we can talk about anything, hard stuff. You know, we sat on this couch last night working through some upset because my wife wasn't feeling well after gum surgery, but there was a whole series, but we talked it through and it was really, really challenging and then really awesome, you know, and it ended in laughter. So for me, I mean, when I see successful people in all business, and I don't necessarily use the term successful as solely financial, by the way. I read success in maybe a different way because I know a lot of really wealthy people that are really unhappy and maybe don't feel successful themselves. But I feel like there's a theme of relationships are healthy relationships throughout are the true road to success and satisfaction.
That's very well said. And while you're on that point, what would you define success as?
Well, you know, there's a lot of people that talk about balance these days. And so I run the risk of sounding like a cliche, but I turned 50 this past year and...
You look good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I like to stay active. I don't go to the gym. That's why it's funny. You're like, I saw you at the gym. I'm like, I don't think you did. Oh yeah, I was picking my son up. But no, I feel like success is balance. And balance for me is the inclusion of getting out in the world doing individual sports. I love to snowboard. I love to ski. I love to stand up paddleboard. You know, I go out on this lake out here, Lake Tahoe, and that's my spiritual practice, literally. I mean, going out alone, I don't hug the shore. I hug the shore with friends because friends always want to see me hug the shore. I go straight toward the middle. And when I'm called to stop, I stop. And I often lay down and I just feel 1,000 feet of water under my back and 1,000,000 miles above me. And I'm suddenly connected to something bigger than me. So that is a feeling of success. We all need money, right? We all need money to survive and get by. And sure, the goal is, the American goal seems to consistently be more is better. And my wife and I are very lucky. We have enough, we're good. And we've parlayed some income into real estate investments, which for us provide some passive income, which I know you know about for yourself. And that's I love that. I love that we've done some of that. It's just so cool to be able to do that. But the notion of chasing after money just to have more and more and more is really not the goal. In fact, I can show you on my whiteboard downstairs. I have a thing that I wrote a while ago that I never erase, and it just says how much is enough, and it is absolutely about money. Because, we had a guest stay this weekend and we were discussing that. She's a Buddhist practitioner. I'm not sure why that's very distracted. So I'll start over with that. Are we back?
Yeah.
Are we recording?
You're good. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So sorry about the telephone issue there. So,
no worries.
Yeah, the notion of success is really a rambling, absolutely moving target for me because I measure success again, in terms of relationships. If my kids hate me, I'm a failure, period. If my wife and I can't work our way through, little bumps in the road or have a fantastically fun time together, making art or going on a walk or going paddleboarding or traveling, then I'm a failure. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm married. It's the quality that matters. And so as it relates to my work, for me, that moment in college where I decided I was going to be and then became that and am still that is super, super satisfying. And it doesn't mean you need to know what you're going to be in college. The point is that I made a commitment to something. And I think one can change their commitment as long as there's a commitment. You know, your commitment to this year that you shared with me is admirable, and you're producing something. You're creating something. You don't know what the end result's going to be, but that's okay. It's really the process that matters. And maybe that is my real answer about success. It's a commitment to any process that you're in. Do it 100%. Do it 150%. You're an exceptional athlete. You know that language. Not everyone knows that language. So, push it to the next level. I talk to my kids like, well, all right, you did your assignment. What would make it a little bit better? What would make it a little more awesome to make you love what you did more? That kind of negotiation is huge.
I really like the premise of backfilling, because I think that applies to everything. So originally when you first brought it up, you were talking about just strictly career path, but I think also from a financial standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. So referring to your whiteboard of how much is enough, if you really do have that concept or that mentality of here's all I need, here's what I need, I really want to own a home, and here's what I'm going to need to manage the mortgage payments, and here's what I'm going to need for my wife and I to survive, and maybe that changes once you have kids, etc. But the idea of backfilling is pretty cool. I think another thing that you mentioned of like the idea of success and having that peacefulness and being grounded is a lot of times what I've heard from other people in this podcast is that they have a partner, and most of the time it comes down to a business partner of, look, I need this person to figure out where we're going next, and I need some direction, et cetera. And I think that that's one of the things that I was really curious to have you answer is, so in your field, there actually is a lot more to it than just you getting out there with your camera and taking a photograph. There's a lot of other pieces. There's the editing, there's the lighting, there's the crew to organize, et cetera. But on the surface level, it looks like it's just you snapping pictures in a closed set. So I get it that there's a lot more people involved. But to back up, everyone talks about having multiple business partners and how you need them as your support system, whereas your pitch is less about kind of that angle and more about having so many relationships along the way. So staying in touch with friends and friends of friends and all these other people that not in a I need to use you for me to be more successul.
Right.
But I think that is also a big misconception. It's something that I learned pretty early on is a lot of people are in their jobs and they think that they need to do it themselves. And even within my family, I think that I've seen that is that they have this mentality of, I'm going to be successful. Watch me be successful. I'm going to do this on my own. And I learned early on, when I got out of college, that you will be way more successful if you do lean on the relationships that you have and you do ask for help and you do get direction from, because our mutual friend that synced us up, it took him nothing to do that. It's not calling in a favor. It's not leaning on him in a negative light. But what happens is that you get a lot further. You get a lot further faster by just bringing more people into your circle, I guess. So
there's no doubt.
It's a really good point. And I think that before I ever sat down with you, I kind of had this vision of you're on a little bit of an island because you are a photographer. And so it's on you to go out and find the setting and you to go out and find the person to take the portraits of, or you to be able to get that meeting with the Yukon national championship team, et cetera. But it's really not.
It's so not. And I really, I have to make sure that you completely understand that alone is so not true. I spend so much time alone working, so much time. However, I would be nowhere alone. Zero. I could go on and thank people in this microphone right now. Every single opportunity was built upon someone believing in me, either a friend or a sincere introduction. My best friend, Garrett Burdick, who I lived with, he hired me for my first assistant job to work for one of those photographers in that black book named Elma Garcia. We met then. I was hired to replace him, and we became roommates 2 weeks later, and we've been best friends ever since, and we've been working together ever since. And I will say, without him, there's no way any of this would have happened, because he was the one that said, yeah, man, let's build a dark room in the laundry room of that 3rd-story Victorian apartment that leaked light in the day. I can only print at night. But we built a sink out of plywood and then marine varnished it. And I told you, I tested myself 1 year just selling artwork, not commercial jobs, not hired portraiture, just making prints from a body of work that I call Isolate. And my good friend and I made the frames, and it's friends helping. And, I made enough to live that year, barely, but I did.
How much did you make?
$16,000.
Living in San Francisco.
Living in San Francisco in the early 90s in Lower Haight. And it was phenomenal. Yeah. Eating tomato sandwiches and making our own beer. And Garrett, on his own career path as a photographer, was so supportive of me. Always, always, always. And that kind of support is one's fuel when in the hard times, Mm-hmm. And all of the men and women that modeled for me for this Isolate series, they had nothing to gain. I had them in radioactive, toxic, lost industrial landscape environments, trespassing, all the time. And they're so into it. And we had a ball. And, my other dear friend, Matt Riak, who's worked with Garrett and I for 15 years, who now practically independently runs a location scouting business that we started in San Francisco as another layer to our photography businesses, because there are a few. And Matt is somebody who to this day is just, he absolutely has my back. And I've got a big project that I want to embark upon here in the next few months, honoring the leaders of the clean energy movement. And Matt is just 1,000%. He doesn't know where he's going to have the time or how he's going to travel. And he has a family, but he's like, we're doing this. And that's very, very powerful. And all of the athlete portraits, that door was opened because of a friend from middle school who happened to be working for ESPN, coming to San Francisco, working the first few X Games, just coming to my office studio to hang out. What have you been doing? Well, I did all these portraits of people on Haight Street just because I would invite people I met for like a year and a half to my apartment at 3:00 because that's when the light was good. And I was just documenting friends and people I met, not for pay. In fact, it cost me money because I'd offer everyone a print, but I'd built up a stack of work. And she was the one who asked me, well, her name's Maura Mant, what would you do with an athlete? Well, let me think about that. And my answer was I would take them off the field and out of uniform because I'd want to know who's the person, not the slicked up person on the pedestal that's out of everyone's reach, but who's the regular person behind all of that success. And she loved that idea. She's a go-getter and a half times 10. Mm-hmm. She pitched the idea to George Bodenheimer at ESPN, and a project was born where we were making those portraits, and I was making prints, and we were selling them at auction and to collectors, and all the money is going to the V Foundation for Cancer Research. It's brilliant. All from that random, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
Relationships again.
Yeah. What's the project called? The portrait. It was a series.
Yeah, it was
you've
called
done more, but
the ESPY Collection.
Yeah,
and it ended up being 40 portraits of the best of the best. I could have never, back to your point of you're alone, you're on an island. I can't just call up someone like Muhammad Ali and say, hey, can I do your portrait? That was all because of Maura, all because of her opening that door and literally creating this project that I was paid for, so it was great. And Garrett and Matt were both there helping, and other people that worked with us, Jason Pachura and Liz Farrell, just lots of amazing people. But so that project was incredible to be hooked up by way of ESPN's contacts to meet the best of the best.
What year was that?
There was 2 rounds of that. 2000, 2001 was one set, and then we reignited it in 2006, I believe.
And just to give some context, anyone listening who has not checked this out, you need to Google it. You need to look at some of these portraits. And I have a question that I'll get to, but just to name drop here. So we're talking about Tony Hawk, Muhammad Ali, Shaquille O'Neal, Brett Favre, Michael Phelps. I mean, the list goes on. It's pretty
Crazy
Shaun
talent.
White. It was
crazy talent.
Yeah, and one of the quotes that I actually saw, and this is why. So I talked to Rick yesterday. I was on the ski slope. I didn't tell you that, but
I could tell by the way you're breathing. I didn't call you out, but I knew it.
I missed one of my runs with my friends because he called and I dropped everything. But So originally Rick had thought that we were going to do this over the phone, and that's the challenge in my seat of not having a paid job right now to be able to fund this. However, there is no chance in hell that I'm going to do any of these sit downs over the phone because the real meat is sitting down and, to your point, relationships and getting to know someone and having that eye contact and just engagement of who you are and what you're about. And so one of the quotes that I actually pulled from your website is you mentioned that the most successful portraits are the result of an intense two-way dialogue where something vital and universal is expressed and recorded. Mm-hmm. And to your point of sitting with these athletes, the pictures are taking them off of the snowboard or off of the court, et cetera. And one of my favorites actually that you did, I think it was in the first series, I'm not positive, but is Serena Williams. And it's a close up of her. Mm-hmm. And it's a zoomed in shot, mm-hmm. and she looks so elegant and feminine, and she's gorgeous, but I think the standard thought about her is that she is a dominant person. She's much more muscular. She's a little bit more masculine than all of her competition. So that's part of the reason why I love that photo. But
thank you. It was wonderful to meet her. I met her briefly when I photographed her sister, Venus, at a different time. And I went to their home at the time. They lived in a sort of double wing house. It was really cool. You enter through the front. Take a right, you're in Serena's side. Take a left, you're in Venus's side. So the Venus portrait is sort of a hysterical story, but to the Serena side, I met her then briefly, and then we couldn't do the portrait that day. So I ended up meeting her. You know, you kind of have to take what you get, the where and when. So I met her at a golf course in Florida. Why a golf course? I'm not sure. It was convenient for her. And we met in this crummy little room where we talked about clothing. And I always kind of pre-scout what's around the area because I like using backgrounds. I like textures if they can somehow relate to the portrait. That's always my go-to. I want to help tell a story with a background, but sometimes it's move in. So she was so feminine. I was staggered by the way she spoke, the way I showed her some portraits that I'd done previously. And I remember coming to the Brett Favre portrait, which is literally just his hands. Yeah. The portrait of Brett Favre, you don't even see his face except out of focus. And I know I wrote down what she said, but I can't remember, but it was something like, that's so something. And the way she said it, it was so soft and sweet. And I felt like I had just met it in a way, it validated the vision of the project for me because it was exactly like to your point. She's always in a way like shiny and sweating and so
grunting
male presentation. And she is a badass athlete. And she's a wonderful, delicate woman, who happens to have pipes bigger than yours or mine. Right. And so that was what was really exciting. And there were these, I think they're technically called banyan trees. They're trees in the South that have real cordian, the roots are kind of, they remind me of human veins when you pump up the forearm and so there was this sinewy quality to these trees, and I felt like she matched that. Her physicality matched that, but she wanted to wear really feminine colors, and the photos ended up being black and white, but that's okay. She just was into being feminine.
Yeah.
And so as if you could look at the proof sheets, I was pulled back and there's the tree and the texture of the tree and her, and she looked very strong. But the more I moved in, the more true the portrait became. And we had established a rapport, and she wasn't conscious anymore. And she wasn't remembering the thousands of photos she'd been propped up to do in the past. Because that's something you got to work through with people that have been photographed a lot. So you pulled a quote from my website. It was very much that we kept working. And we're not talking hours here. We're talking 30 minutes. And her whole energy matched that soft person that I had met in the hotel room. And truly, she became more and more beautiful to me the closer I moved in. And all that was left was the wonderful texture of her hair kind of matching that background of the tree, which then became pretty much irrelevant. It was just her wonderful face. And in a moment of calm and serenity, just gazing out, and I really felt like I had gotten to a quiet moment that in a way matched her commentary on Brett Favre's portrait. So I felt a sense of success to the word success. The rapport had developed. We didn't become best friends. We didn't say, let's go have drinks. It wasn't like that. It was an energetic rapport. It was a calm space that wasn't me telling her what to do to fulfill the cliche of Serena Williams. It was just her being her, me being me, not a big crew, no flashes. Natural light, so you could get there. We're like hanging out on the side of a road by a tree.
That's so cool.
That was it.
It's really cool, and I'm sure you have those stories about most of the people that you have shot, especially athletes, because I'm sure you get put in some unique situations when you're trying to chase these people down, even though it's scheduled through somebody else. But so just to give a quick background on that, you, from a commercial client standpoint, you've worked with ESPN, Chevrolet, NFL, ABC. You've done some really cool stuff. I think that probably, out of the stuff for the Super Bowl champions, the NBA champions, all of those shoots, and then obviously all of the ESPN portrait series, you're probably most known for the set that you had with Muhammad Ali. Is that fair to say?
Well, it's certainly, chasing after notoriety or being known for anything. Listen, there are people way more successful than me and that have done way more than me. So I don't even think like that. But yes, I think Muhammad Ali is technically known to be the most famous man in the world in some circles, right? So naturally, if you align yourself with someone like that, it's going to become a big deal. Yeah.
And
but,
I would also
getting in the ring, like I have a real, sorry to cut you off, but I have a friend who is very successful in real estate, and he has all these great quotes. And I'm going to screw this one up, but the punchline is about being in the ring. You got to get in the ring. You can't win if you don't get in the ring. And the quote's way more clever and interesting than that. But I always just remember that, and I think of that with my Muhammad Ali time, because it does boil down to, what is photography? Photography is a fraction of a second captured in time, one image, right? So if you run with that, it's like it all boils down to these seconds, right? And again, to connect with you on the lacrosse field, metaphorically, the ball crosses the line and it's in the net. It's a fraction of a second. And what is it that leads up to that? Teamwork, being at your best, being at your highest physical capacity, being at your most sharpened intellectual focus, being prepared, not forgetting your stick at home on the day of the game. Like, there's all these things that lead up. And so the Muhammad Ali portrait session was probably one of the most satisfying portrait sessions for me, regardless of being Muhammad Ali or not. And the reason is because that engagement that we arrived at was so rich and so full, and it lasted so many more hours than we had scheduled. To me, it was, it's kind of like this interview. I mean, I was kind of planning on a half hour, and where are we at, an hour and a half? I'm really enjoying
Good.
And it's not because I'm enjoying hearing myself talk. I like you're nice to be with. So, that is rapport where it's like we're doing a portrait session, right? So the Muhammad Ali experience, going to his home in the middle of nowhere, Berrien Springs, Michigan, Al Capone's old estate, farmhouse, snow, Dobermans, his wife's there, his lawyer's there, a few people from ESPN are with me, and everyone's nervous, myself included. We're fully expecting a hello. What do you want to do? Let's get this done. And then this is our home, like this isn't a hangout session. And so turned into a hangout session. And it wasn't because it wasn't going well. It was going exceptionally well, but we just had a great time. We started laughing. I don't need to go into the stories. There's a couple videos online that tell some of the fun stories, but he was so gracious. And he was so fun, and he was so willing to play with me, and he was so willing to get in the ring. And we got in the ring together, and my senses were so heightened. It's very much like an athlete being in the zone. Time bends. I didn't know it was hours. I really didn't. It was just wonderful. And we had lunch. And speaking of journals, he showed me one of his journals. And those portraits have been really appreciated because of the point of view. Again, it was him out of the ring. It was who's the guy. There's pictures of his hands in a calm state, not making cliche fists because he's a boxer. He's an old man. What does his old man hands look like that used to punch? They don't punch anymore. And resting on his journal. And what is it when you look in his eyes and there's that calm moment, because he's such a goof. He loved to play, and a lot of our time was about that. In fact, I even got him in the mirror making his funny faces at himself. I'm like, this is, and he was doing it, and it wasn't till the very, very end that he dropped into that same space I referenced getting to with Serena, where he just rested on the chair and he's looking at me. Maybe I wore him out. Maybe he was trusting me. I don't know. But the proof is, again, the word success. So months later, I always send prints like, thank you for the shoot. Months later, his daughter called me and said, nobody has taken pictures of him like you did. They're cool. Like family photos. They're wonderful. They're my dad.
Yeah.
Can you do more? Because I want to put him up. I have a restaurant. I want to put him up. Can you do more? I said, sure. So I met him again in Beverly Hills. And we did more portraits on the roof of the Beverly Wilshire, in the same spirit, the same energy, the same vibe. Though he was much more tired that day, I recall. But those pictures are super satisfying because of the vibe that we arrived at together. And he was so funny. He gave me a bunch of $1 million bills that he had printed up, and he signed them. He goes, "You're going to need these." So I have a bunch of $1 million bills from Muhammad Ali, and I have he did this funny joke magic trick for me, and it required a fake thumb on his finger, and he gave me that. So he gave me all these funny little objects. And,
that's cool.
Yeah, now 4 of those portraits are in the U.S. Embassy in Turkey, hanging because the ambassador chose them amongst other arts. There's a wonderful program called the Arts and Embassy Program, where American artists' work is put up in U.S. embassies all over the world. And it's my second time doing that. Another body of work of mine it was cool. They chose the Ali ones, and this was prior to him dying, which is really poignant. That he's being honored in that way. So, yeah.
So to switch gears, so you're able to log several hours with Muhammad Ali, and and to your point, you kind of break him down, and you really get a sense of who he is, and you're able, and the portrait of him resting is amazing because you look deep into his eyes, you look into his soul in that picture. It's pretty remarkable. And then obviously the one with his hand on his journal, it's pretty cool because it does give, it's just a hand and it's just a piece of paper with a little bit of writing on his journal, but it gives you a sense of who he is and that he's at the twilight of his career and his life and everything. And it's just this very calming picture. But anyway, so you have several hours with someone like that and you're able to really dive in. And then some of your other work will be, I guess it's with ABC, where you're meeting with all of the players on the teams. So you've done that for a couple times with the Pittsburgh Steelers when they played the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. You've done it with the San Antonio Spurs before playing the Miami Heat. And you get, one of the things I read is that you're only looking at tops 5 to 7 minutes with each of these athletes.
Yes.
and you're trying to get that same mentality, that same drop your guard. Let me see your true self.
Yeah.
Getting back to some of our conversations before we even started about this, of the pinnacle and the height of being a professional athlete is you probably started early at an early age, then you're all through middle school, you through high school, you get a college scholarship, you come out of the league, you're in the league forever. So someone like Tim Duncan or even LeBron James. So these guys have gone through so much, and you're now sitting in a room with them, and they have that potentially attainable trophy.
Yeah.
The pinnacle, the height of their entire lives at this point, sitting right in there in front of it, and you only have 5 minutes to capture it.
Yeah. Well, so here's a little more explanation, which makes it, I think it gives a little more framing. So those pictures, which I in fact did do before a couple of Super Bowls and a handful of NBA finals, the concept was essentially the same. The concept was, before the series starts, we have the trophy, the real deal, in a room, and the athlete is invited. They know they're going to do a photo shoot. They don't know exactly what it's all about.
Cool.
I think some years it was explained and some years it wasn't, but the point was, come in the room and, hello, my name's Rick Chapman. And, again, Matt was often there. Garrett was often there. Jason was often there. So everyone, the team energy's there. We're all together. Valerie Fischler, who's just an awesome person, worked with ESPN, did all the NBA ones. And so they walk in and it's like the trophy's sitting there in the lights in this dark room. And I'm basically like, it's yours for now. Right? And you can imagine, like, some guys that have never come within 10 feet of it, the newer guys, the look on their face is priceless. And I'm like, you can pick it up, you can hover around it, you can be afraid of it, do whatever the heck you want. It's yours for 4 or 5 minutes, and we're going to do portraits with it. And that was always, it's very different than the out of uniform, off the field. Mm-hmm. The goal is always the same: establish rapport and, have the real deal come through. But the real deal was, what is their reaction to this trophy? Because after shooting with me, then they would go to another room and be interviewed about, what does this trophy mean to you? So that the final cuts, which were used during the series, were these little 30 to 40 second vignettes of a portrait of mine blend to another portrait, while their voice is saying what the finals mean to me is this, what the trophy means to me is that, and then maybe a cut to them being interviewed, and then back to another trophy of mine. There's hundreds of them now. Very similar format. And they're all uniquely interesting because everyone's different, right? And everyone responds different. I'll forget all the names, but I'm forgetting Garnett.
Kevin Garnett.
When he was on the Celtics.
Yeah.
I don't know where the heck we were, but it was great. I was somehow ready for him. Oh, I know, because I was imagining just the incredible reach of his arms.
Yeah.
So I was backed up. I wasn't close up to the set. And I met him right at the door, and I shook his hand and I said, very nice to meet you. Congratulations. We're doing a portrait with that trophy there, and let's see where it goes. And he just looked at that thing like, it is mine. And he walks over and he grabs it and he lifts it up and just screams and holds this thing out in the wide arms. And I was right spot, ready, boom. And it was just a really satisfying, spontaneous moment. And then, a lot of the coaches especially, I'm not touching that. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? Because I'm not touching it. And I'm like, well, let's get around it. What's the energy of this thing? Feel the energy of it. You don't have to touch it, but I want you to look at it, gaze at it. And, some of the pictures are successful and some of them aren't. But that sense of play made those shoots very fun, very stressful. Where were we? San Antonio. And it was like LeBron's third round of this with me, because he just kept being on the team that,
Yeah.
And I remember I was Dwayne Wade, who's just a lovely guy, just a really, hey, what do you want to do? Whatever you want to do, just
cool.
That kind of game on, team spirit, good attitude. Derek Gardner was like that too. But Dwayne Wade's like, all right. And he walks up and grabs it. And LeBron, I can't remember if he was up next or had already been shot, but he's photobombing. And I literally only have 5 minutes. He's jumping in front of the camera and, laughing and ruining the shots basically. And, it was really funny in retrospect because I'm doing my job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, LeBron, take your big feet and walk over there and get out of my way, And he laughs, and we're all laughing about it, and of course he cooperated.
Yeah.
It's just funny to have that experience because that I think was my 4th time doing pictures with him, and does he know me by name and is my best friend? No, but he certainly recognized me at that point, and we had a nice engagement.
I think you're in a really cool spot too in that situation because you're not asking them for anything. All day long it's, and I just know this from working in sports, is that everyone is saying, come, you got to do this interview, and then come and you got to sign these autographs. Then you got to go here and you got to go there. And it gets pretty monotonous. Mm-hmm. It gets almost to the point where I always hear people say, oh, such and such is a jerk, or such and such is, it didn't live up to my expectations when I met him. And I always try and put myself in their shoes and think, all right, well, what was their day like?
Of course.
This is the 15th time they've had to do this, or they just finished practice and then you stick them right in front of the microphone. They got to give a 30-minute.
Oh yeah.
But from where you sit during that, you don't need anything. You're going to do the shoot. I need a couple shots. It behooves you to get into this, but you're not asking for payment. You're not being I need autographs. You're just there, and hey, you go have fun. I'm in the background. So it puts you in a good light and I guess a good friendship state because you're not coming to them asking them for anything.
Well, you're right and you're wrong. I mean, those particular portraits certainly were part of that press day thing. And I also felt for them because, the biggest games of some of their lives, literally, leading up to and forevermore, are coming up. And there's this thing called press day, which I'm pretty sure is when we did all this stuff. And they are getting carted around, and, I'm just another stop. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely the vibe sometimes with guys. And it was my job to help make it a little more interesting, make it a little more fun, and let it be theirs a little bit. So for some guys like Garnett, well, sure. Yeah. Like he just had a ball. Yeah. He was like,
you had a present for him.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think the last time I did that with Kobe Bryant, he was pretty much over it. Mm-hmm. That was the feeling. And I don't blame him. Like how many times can you do that? So there's a beginning, a middle, and end, and keeping it fresh and keeping it engaged and keeping it respectful is really a big deal. I never, by practice, I never ask. At the most, I'll say congratulations. I'm never like, hey, that was a great game, or whatever, let's review, or tell me what it was like, or I never go there ever because they do get that a lot. And it's not what I'm interested in, frankly. In fact, when given the opportunity, and most of the time when there's a little bit of a hello, I loved asking, these people that have been photographed a bazillion times. I always ask, is there a shot you want to do? Is there a picture of you that has never been done that you would like to do? Because if there is, let's start there. And that's really it's been a fun way, breaking of the ice, and a fun way to demonstrate, not just say, but demonstrate that this is a two-way dialogue. Mm-hmm. This is two-way. And I'm here for you, you're here for me, and let's make something cool and fun, and let's enjoy this.
So I have two questions left for you, and then I'll get out of your house here, this gorgeous home overlooking Lake Tahoe, which is great setting. So one of the things I kind of mentioned to you the other day is you have all these media outlets now with social media and Instagram, and I just bought the new iPhone 7, and the camera on it is incredible.
Phenomenal.
So you have all these people that are they think they're amazing photographers in their own right. And it's not a competition, but I guess one of the challenges is someone coming into this type of space now with everyone having a camera, everyone having this free outlet to illustrate any of their shots. What would be your advice coming into your specific career path or your specific field, someone who wants to get into it? And I 100% get it. What we started this podcast talking about is backfilling and just having that mentality of this is what I'm going to do because it's my passion. Mm-hmm. But taking it a step farther, what advice would you give to someone out there has just made up their mind? And now what?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question, and if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm a very optimistic person in general. But that's tough. It's a very tough answer to give and be honest, because the answer is that it's difficult. It's really difficult, and you pointed out a few things that I'll just kind of reiterate quickly. When I started, photographers used film, and they used special large format cameras and things that a lot of the public, just one, didn't have any interest in investing in, and two, it took a lot of skill to expose things right, to get it printed right. There was a real craft there that was so much fun to practice and refine. And I have literally been working through the digital revolution. And every year that passes, the cameras get better, including the iPhone 7. Absolutely phenomenal. And everyone is shooting now. And, even Apple puts up giant billboard ads shot on an iPhone. Yeah. And the fact is they are. You used to have an 8x10 camera to shoot for billboards, and that's not easy business to manipulate one of those things. So it's taken what was once a very refined skill set where you're an expert, and the technology has put it in the hands of everybody. And so what's left? If the camera is doing all of that craftsmanship and Photoshop's filling in the gaps and Instagram filters and all of these things, what does that do? Well, it devalues the skill set. Just like musicians are having to find new ways, because the common perception now is that music is free. Photos are free and anyone can do it. And that's true and not true. Does one still need an eye to make a great photograph and composition? And yes, so there's still artistry involved. So my advice, first off, to someone who wants to get into photography is don't necessarily think of yourself as a technician, a photographer, but rather as a communications expert. And the joke is, like, when I was in college, communications major was the easy way out, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm a comm major. Yeah. And it was like, oh, well, I guess you're not going to be a lawyer. And, good luck getting a job, right? Yeah. But I was thinking about that this morning, like flipping that whole concept on its head and saying, well, no, what if you're a communications expert? I'm a lyrics freak, for example. I love lyrics that have meaning and tell stories. And that's poetry, and that's communication. Music from the 60s and 70s was so politicized and had so much impact on political movements. I expect to see that coming up. I love electronica, but I very much expect in the current environment that's very tense right now in our country, that what we're going to start seeing is the arts having a voice again, and people finding words and lyrics and imagery that expresses either their frustration or their vision for the future. And so I think my best advice to anyone going into any art form, because we need artists badly, is that one going into the arts is one going into the art of communication. And coming up with new, clever ways to communicate is really the end game. And so it's not necessarily about we can line up 1,000 people with an iPhone 7 and say, communicate that, I'm looking out the window, that the snow in Tahoe is really intimidating right now for a lot of people. We've had a bunch of big storms. Your job is to communicate that, and that the output for that could be to the commercial world. We need to communicate that for journalism, or it could be for the arts. I need to communicate big, intimidating snow. So it's not necessarily communication being linear, like newsworthy. It can be an art form. So when we have those 1,000 people lined up with iPhone 7s, the winner is the one who can communicate it best, right? And so thinking of it from that standpoint will set one apart. And we'll go back to the writing. I think that the great artists and the most useful communicators are going to be the ones that know all of the tools, that utilize technology successfully. So when I was starting, it was more like be a pinpoint expert. Absolutely define what you're great at. And I was like, all right, I'm going to be a great portrait photographer. And I opened up a location scouting company, and I was doing my best at very specific bodies of work to share with the art world. Those are my 3 avenues. So one, I diversified, which I think is advice I would give again. But I would say even more, a photographer now needs to also be a videographer and know how to edit video and know how to shoot stills and know how to write and know how to edit and do all of those things. So by framing it as becoming an exceptional communicator, I think, you've got your tool belt with all this stuff, and the end goal is communication. I think those are the people that are going to have the most success in the world that I live in moving forward. And there'll be even more than 3 avenues for them to share their skills. Sadly, the fees and the rates for doing commercial photography, I think it's pretty well understood, have dropped. Fees for the same job that you did in the 90s are the same as today because there's more photographers. There's more people that can go out and bang it out, and it's undervalued. But and I'll stop soon here because I could ramble on this. I think the kids, young adults coming out of art school, if their focus is that they are providing a breadth of communication skills for people in the world in the 2nd dimension, the 3rd dimension, that's where their value is going to be found. In companies with full-time jobs, as freelancers, as solitary artists, and they should all invest in real estate.
It's good advice. No, it's a really good answer, and I honestly, the reason I asked it is because I personally wanted to know. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people out there that can see it as a negative, that there's so many different avenues out there. But to your point, it really comes down to you've just equipped the masses with a much larger tool belt. It still comes down to the technician, and it still comes down to the eye and how you're going to dive into it. So
how you're going to, and it's always been that. It's the spin. How do you use the tool? How do you make it your own? And the way you make it your own is the 10,000 hour rule. Which is Malcolm Gladwell? Is that the author's name? I might be botching his name, but there's this concept of to become great at something, you need to put in 10,000 hours. You've certainly done it with lacrosse, right? I've certainly done it with photography. And that's where surrounding yourself with people that support you and believe in you, and you believe in yourself, get crazy, get obsessed, and try doing an art show once, and try doing a photojournalistic project once. Be obsessed. Just keep trying, keep failing. I mean, those are all cliches that we've heard a million times, but it's really true. Just do it. I'm up against that for myself. I'm still learning that lesson. This project that I really have been talking about for years now of doing portraits of the pioneers in clean energy. I've been talking about it. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about how to pay for it. I haven't done one portrait yet. And my wife, Leslie, calls me on it all the time. She's like, just go start doing the portraits. And she's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I've let life get in the way of that guy that was in that dark room in Lower Haight in San Francisco, printing all night in a plywood sink that was covered in marine varnish because I couldn't do it in the day because the light leaked through the walls. That guy is the guy who put me sitting here today. And so that guy, for me, I need to remind myself, if this project's going to get off the ground, I need to re-embrace that spirit and that energy of becoming obsessed.
And that was exactly my final question, is what is next for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly that. I'm not going to sit here and get political in a very, very hot time. But this project that I've been thinking about and seeing is really important for a while now, as of a few weeks ago, I think has never been more important. Mostly because regardless of my political opinions, I do believe in science, and I admire the scientists in our midst around the world, and I admire the innovators in our midst around the world that are giving us things like an iPhone 7, that are creating vehicles that are running off battery power that got pulled from solar panels on a roof. Look at this incredible time we're in. One cannot deny that level of innovation is a new revolution. We experienced the Industrial Revolution. We've experienced certainly a digital revolution, and now there is a clean energy focus and revolution going on. In the most optimistic of ways, it's not against anything. But for me, I'm feeling like my responsibility right now is to celebrate and really focus on the who's who in that world that are changing our lives. I'm a little older than you, and we're both a lot older than my kids. My kids are going to see a different world, and it's going to be driven, in my opinion, by the technology that's being innovated right now. So I want to find the young Thomas Edison. I want to find the young Henry Ford in our midst. They're starting to be identified, but I want to do their portrait in the same style that I did the ESPY Collection. Who's the human? What's the vibe? And I want those portraits to move people, like you kind of elaborated that the Muhammad Ali portrait somewhat touched you. You said you saw into his soul. I can't claim that I did that, but if that's what you felt, then phenomenal. If you were moved in any way, that's the job of art. That's the job of being a communications expert. My goal was to help communicate the energy or the humanness of Muhammad Ali to the viewer of a piece of paper that's looking at something in the second dimension. Well, you told me that's the highest compliment that I could receive, So I want to do that with this culture of people, and that's going to be my job.
That's very cool, and I am excited to follow up, and I'm going to hold you to it, I guess, since you just threw it out there on the airwaves in the World Wide Web.
Right.
Well, I will. I'll close up with this, and one thing that I was surprised that you brought up, and it's something that me personally I've always done on my own is, but I always felt weird about it, is doing these individual sports or these individual things. I've always been a team sports guy growing up, and then even, post college, et cetera. But where I tend to find the most serenity and the most happiness and the most, I guess, kind of groundedness, where you're coming back to understand what you have next on the plate and being confident, being happy, etc., is doing these individual things. So going on a hike by myself or going paddleboarding by myself. No one's ever told me that they've gone out to the middle, laid down, and I do that. I actually out in down in San Diego, I like to go out, especially Coronado area, and I'll lay down and just float. Downfall is there's a lot of boats that come through there,
Right.
so because the military base, but
somewhat conscious.
but no, it is. I think, and it's not for everyone. But what typically comes out of that is going on a hike by yourself, going on a run, and it doesn't even have to be physical. But doing a paddleboard or just going to a museum by yourself, any of those things to kind of take you out of your element, take you out of your daily routine, and what you generally grasp out of that is you will get a better control or a better grasp, not to say the same word, but of where your head's at, and you will understand your thoughts a little bit better. Things clear up.
Yep.
And you just get that groundedness and focus. So it's cool that you brought that up, because I think it's a really, really pivotal thing to do, whether it's on the regular or whether it's you listen to this podcast and you need to just go out and do it right then and see where your head's at. But
I think we live in an era, to piggyback on your note there, I think we live in an era where we're called to be distracted 100% of our waking hours, right? Again, giving Apple a lot of airplay here. These phones, these iPads, these computers, we're so drawn to fill in the dead space. I mean, Leslie and I talk about sometimes if we're traveling alone for work or whatever, we'll be out to dinner alone. And that feeling of sitting there in a restaurant, eating a meal without picking up your phone to check the email, it's a super big struggle. When in fact, if you can find that place of self-comfort, self-soothing. I mean, when you have babies, this whole thing of training your baby to self-soothe, it's interesting to think of that as an adult. When do we get a chance to self-soothe or to just know ourselves other than by taking another selfie and posting it on Facebook? That's not knowing yourself. That's another distraction. So finding it's a moment of meditation. It's quiet. It's quiet with self. That's where journaling is also a time when you're with yourself and you have to really address the voices in your head. And are you comfortable there or are you not? And if you're not, then keep talking with yourself. And that's not a comfortable place for most people. And we're not, it's not a judgment because, we're all of us are addicted to our devices, all of us, myself absolutely included. And I think it's in a way part of why I haven't jumped on this portrait project about clean energy yet is I find myself constantly reacting. I'm in react mode. I wake up in the morning, I pick up my phone, I check my emails. I'm suddenly reacting. Now I'm on my computer reacting to more emails, reacting. And that guy that used to not have all that crap would get up in the morning, get on his motorcycle. I'd go to my studio. I'd get in the darkroom and I'd be producing, proactive. I would be fulfilling the vision in my head instead of reacting. And I think the danger of these amazing devices is that we are now in a phase in our culture, world culture, we have to remember that we're reacting there to that thing. And we need to get back into those places where you're out on a paddleboard or you're just getting up in the morning doing the creative thing. Is it the 4-Hour Work Week author that talks about that? It's really true. And it's going to take training, to do that. So yeah, the individual sports, the active meditation, the quiet meditation, those are all tools that, man, if we can help people get into that, it's a good thing. The takeaway from this podcast.
You're spot on. And I think that's great knowledge, great insight, great advice to anyone and everyone in any career path. So I want to thank you very much for opening your doors. Your wife, Leslie, has been here for like the past hour floating around wondering who this goofball is sitting in your living room. So thank you to her too. But thank you very much for taking the time. And I think ton of good stuff came out of this today. So really, really excited and really appreciative to sit down with us.
It's been my pleasure. And I look forward to hearing where you go after your walkabout.
Well, thank you very much. Vicariously Podcast, we are out.